In this last chapter of the book, the author Rune Engelbrecht Larsens, the author of several books on humanism and freedom, citizenship, and the ideals of freedom in life, and now he's this book about freedom and righteousness. It's a bit old book, but it had an impact on my readings and understandings, and it's a good book that can make a lot of debate. And so, in this last chapter, which is a little difficult to encompass, he talks about freedom as an utopia. Is it really possible to implement it, and can it be implemented for some long time without being disturbed or distorted? And that's what I'm gonna get through in this last chapter, so we can think along and think against, and maybe just widen our horizons on these very important concepts. Um, and so maybe after that, I will make a summary of the whole book and the chapters in it. And the idea of freedom is like the idea to find the goal of it is to be happy and to achieve your potential and be that individual that you are and want to be. You don't need, if you don't need society, you will just have these boundaries that fits you, and you will open up to social relations as it fits you, and you won't have a state. But because of the necessity of life, we have the social contract, as we've talked about before. And so the right to find this happiness on your own and to choose your own life is a very, very basic humanistic idea that the author is defending, and that's very, very deep rooted in how we also feel and think as humans and as individuals when we are taught these thoughts. And that's what he wants to discuss here. On one side, he sees the ideas of liberty and freedom as utopias. That means a very beautiful idea that cannot be realized, at least not in this life. And that's why some religions can appeal a lot to people, because especially religions that talks about an afterlife and a paradise and a better world, or maybe a new earth, is somehow also logically appealing, because where else should we realize this potential of being happy? That everyone is special, everyone is in his or her right to be a unique individual, to be whatever story he or she chooses to be and strive for. And so on the opposite side of that, you have the control of the totalitarian way of life, where somebody tells you what way it is the best, and that you have a certain way to go, and you should not strive away from that. We have on one side religions, and we have on the other side regimes and political ideas and ideologies that talks about controlling the individual and leading him or her to become part of the society as a way of giving up your freedom for security, or giving it up to gain a part of something stronger and bigger than yourself. And that's because it's much needed and you have to do it. So there is these sides of freedom that's not so clear, and in which way to go. But the author emphasizes individualism, and not to mistake it for egoism, like only self-centered around yourself. But individualism doesn't mean you don't take care of others, or don't be part of the social contract in society. It's just an emphasis on your right to be different and to have other thoughts and be critical, and not to adhere to any kind of law or in the society that goes against your true and free conscience. So it's always between the freedom and the security of life. These discussions seems to be waving forth and back. There is no ideal to be found out there, and there is no way you can just achieve freedom so easily. We have seen it in different ways of life, ideologies, and way of practices. They all lack something, all the way back from the Greek, and maybe before that, and after that, definitely. And in our time, if you can look true into history and life, you will see it's not easy to achieve that kind of freedom. But we still want it and talk about it, And the basic idea here is that the individual is the path to true freedom. And if you secure the individual in a society against tyranny and suppression, against the collective, and against somebody dominating every aspect of life of this individual, then you can secure the human to be in his own right, like to be that power that is in him as an individual, not as an egoist, not as a one who only thinks about himself and lack empathy and doesn't care about others and only want to grow himself, but to be that person in balance between himself and society and free to do so. And that's what he, this is of course my interpretation or retelling of what I'm reading in many pages. It's a bit difficult chapter because he's trying to encapsulate all these things in a lot of words and pages, and that's typically what happens to intellectuals. Like it's a difficult process to get there. But here he talks about Marcus Tullius Cicero from the first century before Christ, before our time. They can say there is no much greater thought or way than freedom. But if it's not even for everyone, it doesn't deserve to be called freedom. So it's about securing the freedom on a basis of equality, that everyone has the right to be free and everyone has the right to pursue their own goals. And you see, now we're already in a trouble because it will contradict, and the freedom of your behavior and the way of life you want can at one point or another get into limitations. So who's going to decide, and who's going to make the argument stronger? And here we go to the idea of the majority, and he discussed that in some of his pages here. That well, if you are part of the majority and the majority has put some certain limits on freedom for the individual, well, then these are the best, because then you find that balance between who you want to be and who you can be. And so the majority's rule is the rule of the many who agree on some certain issue, and they have the right. So the majority's agreement becomes the right, and the right is might. And so he gives a parallel to, if one dictator can suppress an individual, so can a majority suppress a minority within it. So we have these two poles to look at. And the way he looks at these two sides, the majority and minority, is by also quoting some of the philosophers and intellectuals who have already seen the shadow side of the democratic societies they were so keen on promoting or looking into or trying to see the future of. And the first of them is Alexis de Tocqueville in the 1830s, who was skeptical about the democratic freedom spirit in the young USA, because he could see and wrote that it might be the new suppressing one type of elite suppressors against the majority of the world. It might be that new power of some people wanting things a certain way, suppressing others and suppressing people in another manner. John Stuart Mill has also seen the fault in that idea of the majority and the power they can have, and he say that they can sometimes interfere in the private sphere, and they go making regulations into that private sphere of the individual. So in the end, this society will have to press its ideas and way of living over the heads of people with another thoughts. And in 1877, Lord Acton wrote about that he say the most secure test, if we really are a free country, and if a country is free, is how it provides security for its minorities. Because if you want the freedom for the majority, you have to secure it for the minority. And like you want to pursue your goals, you have to secure that for the others to some limit. And so there could be some potential dangers, said Tocqueville, in this modern democracy and the way it goes about promoting freedom, but at the same time being the suppression of the majority and the way of the majority all by itself. And here he goes in two different directions in a way in this chapter. One is discussing freedom, pacifism, and the opposite of that individualism that also has been seen as the pure evil, that wanting to be an individual, the individuation process, as has been talked about later by several others philosophers. That could be the absolute evil, because that would be synonym with your devilish ways and your egoism taking over. And that's the argument against individualism, and per se also it becomes an argument against humanism, because you need something from the outside and bigger than you to control this. So he has a discussion about this and how it manifested in Eastern Europe, and how things came to be in different countries, and that it becomes the will to be unfree, that the individual, like, for being free, you accept equality, and by accepting equality you become unfree. And that's the way of life, that you are not free to do whatever you like. There is right and wrong and a set of rules that will control you. So you are just part of that, and you will forever be part of that. And whatever way you try to break free would be a kind of like exceeding your limits, especially if it's a godly law, a religious law. And so here he goes in another direction, quoting a very famous debate I also myself went to look into at that time between the Pope Ratzinger, Joseph Ratzinger, and Jürgen Habermas, the philosopher. And they had exactly these arguments against each other that could fit into this context. And then he goes discussing terrorism and the fight on that in our modern world, because this book is in from the beginning of the millennia. And we had 11 September 11 and the fight on terrorism, and they were with us or against us, and the free world against the non-free world, and all these things that just were put up as black and white measures. And so he discusses this in length as well, and he quotes some reports and people who have been following the trends of fighting the evil and everything that's scary. Is that a true measure, or is it maybe over exaggerated to make people want more security? And by wanting more security, they give up more and more of their freedoms, and they allow more of the state and the one elite system to control them, and maybe they cannot even argue against it, because they would be synonym with allowing terrorism or giving way to the fall of society. And that's a more interesting aspect, he says, of the whole fight on terrorism, whether it was really necessary to make people fear that much, or should they more have feared the side effects of this terrorism. And that's a long discussion, and I don't want to get into it here, but it's interesting that he's actually taken it up and speaking about it as well, because several other people have been thinking the same thing, and that goes still for all the way up till today. And so the trouble with this is history shows us how sometimes the fight for freedom can be just like exchanging one kind of dictatorship with another. And he gives several examples, but it's like fighting something you want to change because it's suppressive, and then when the new kind of leadership comes through, they start suppressing people at the same way. So the pictures, they will shift, and the enemies will continue, and the values of persecution and using the state and using the power of the state to take people in a new direction with new values will stay the same. It will just be a change of whatever it is that has been before with whatever it is people or that group wants to be afterwards. So he discussed this argument of security and the scenario of what to say, of being afraid, and the fear as a factor in people's life, and how it can potentially take the freedom from people, and leave them under the rule of the majority or the elite. And that's back to the quotes. That's exactly what these philosophers had been looking into, and saying that that could go totally wrong. The same way we had the totalitarian regimes in the 20th century. And so he tries to find some kind of solutions, but he's not really focused on that in the book, and the book ends without many suggestions. I think he takes that up in another book, but he ends up like just giving some open ideas to what could be done, or what way it could go. And there he mentions the discussion between Jürgen Habermas, who is a very famous sociologist from Germany, looking into society and saying that whatever culture has an argument that people can listen to and follow and support, has the legitimacy to stay, and to have its argument heard, and its ideas spread. And democracy and freedom ideals should ensure that, whatever kind of people or group it is, if you can argue for something and people can listen to you, or will listen to you, and you have the power to put your arguments through without fear or repercussions, and being in jail for it, well, that's the role of democracy, and that's the role of securing freedom for everyone, is that you can put your ideals and whatever you think forward, and see if people support it. And if they support it, it has the right to be. On the other side, Joseph Ratzinger, also a German who became Pope Benedict XVI and later resigned, well, he says that, okay, it's not about having a minority within a majority. It's more like looking into what is securing human values, and can keep the human nature intact, and out of reach of anything that can destroy it. So he will look at it from a different perspective, and he says that democracy cannot just be both the tool and the end. Okay, it has to look at something outside itself, and something undisputed, something that cannot be touched, that we believe in, kind of an idea or mythology, or a source of value. And we can already hear the theological voice of the Pope here, saying that you need a godly guidance here. You need something outside yourself, because democracy cannot create that value that will protect humans at any rate and any time. And so we need, in a way or another, that kind of metaphysics or idea from outside that will help us keep things going and running according to Pope Ratzinger, in a proper way. And so they had this very long discussion, and he's not mentioning it here, but he's just using some quotes to say that, well, actually, you can have a secular state that's meant to ensure freedoms. You can also have the same secular state suppressing freedoms, maybe freedom to be religious or to agitate for your religious views. And you can put people in jail being afraid of their organizing, and call them dangerous, and say, well, they have an ideology that will break down the society, or maybe take over and take the freedom away from us. And so people in fear will react to that and will see it as evil. And as we said before, people will become dehumanized. And so as a despot, as a one ruler who is tyrannic, can suppress an individual, so can a majority suppress a minority. So the society needs to have a fundament that that's not based on the argument of the majority. The majority ideas can shift, and people can change their minds. And that's the discussion between Habermas and the Pope Ratzinger, that's maybe taking shape now. It's like one is saying, okay, whatever kind of values and ideas that people will listen to and adhere to and feel they really like, that must be the way that we should secure. And at the same time, securing the opposite voices. That's the role of the ultimate way of freedom and democracy and society that builds on these kind of thoughts. And the other side says, well, that cannot be true, because you can just walk in any direction, and maybe you can walk in a suppressive direction, and so you have to have a story, a myth, something outside you, a heavenly guidance to show you what is the true compassion and right way of life. And you can see here the argument between actually humanism and religion, and between religion and secularism at the same time. That was a very interesting debate they had there in 2004, and it's unfortunate that these doesn't keep repeating themselves on that level, like each year or each decade at least. And so he ends up his book by saying, well, humanism and individualism is the way forward. We have to secure them and protect them at any cost, and they shouldn't like be the reason for the power, but they should be regulating our communities. They should not like freedom and humanism and individualism should not be the suppressing force of the communities. So every time somebody wants to put any laws or communions together or be part of something, we say, no, that's against individualism. That's not what I understand he's looking at doing. But he said they should be regulating our communities so we can have this bond and have this society, but without giving totally in to that total solution of the state or the big leader or the big idea or the one truth. There should be space for humans, because he quotes Hannah Arendt here, say that, well, ideologies that take man's individualism is doomed to fail, because she says humans are creative and they can sometimes come with something new that nobody had really foreseen that could happen. And so it's about securing our right to freedom and individualism together and as a community. And so we need diversity, and we need change, and we need the voices of the individuals at all time, because the individual is and stays the basic, it's the cornerstone, it's the DNA of every nation and every group and every culture. But the opposite is not the same. The cultures can come and go, nations can come and go, states can come and go, because they're all built on the shoulders and because of the individual. That's his message. The individual is the thing we need to uphold and protect and teach people to become individuals. And that's the process of individuation he's not mentioning here, but this is my addition from Kierkegaard and Jung, and that's how I understand it in this context. But so he's saying that because of the individuals, we have societies, and we have the state, the nation, the collective institutions, the conventions, the society, the laws, everything that's surrounding us is because there are individuals who agreed on going together and giving up some of their freedoms in order to create all this. And this can be taken away, but they are not there if it wasn't for the individual who can go in different directions or stay in agreement. And so the communication about on that, and he mentions the Danish philosopher and thinker Hal Koch, who talked about the dialogue in democracy, or the talking democracy, whatever that means, and however that can be implemented. I have no idea. He's not mentioned it here. It's a very difficult thing to get on the ground. But anyhow, he's ending this book by saying that our individualism is the basic humanistic idea for society, and that's what we need to hold on to, whatever kind of society we are in and whatever kind of government. And always, in my opinion, what he's trying to say after that, without saying it, but the whole book is saying it, is like, well, be aware and be clever enough to see that if you are taken into some kind of totalitarian solution because of fear or because of the right idea and the truth or the nation or the race, whatever it is, And we remember how Plato had this criticism and that's very actual in our times, taking people under the name of freedom and giving them uh, uh, big ideas about, well, I will make you more free, or I will give you more power, and your way of life will be more expanded. You just have to support me. And meanwhile, the concentration of powers is happening just under the nose of people, and that will create that monster, or has already created a monster that will devour everyone that will go against it and stand in its way. And so the whole book about freedom and righteousness is kind of a debate book, a sum up of many things we see. And I think understanding it can sometimes help us understand what's going on in politics and how to think about them, even though we can be in disagreement or be part of a religious people, or a race or an ethnic group or nationality. But understanding the shifts in history and how they went on, trying to put the idea of freedom into praxis, I think it has been valuable to me, at least, and hope it can be valuable to anyone who maybe took time to read or listen, hear or read the book. And I hope it was helpful and good. It was, at least for me at that time, and helped me dig deeper into these things and make my clear views on it. And maybe I will make a video commenting on the whole book.